While today's billionaires show off with rocket ships and private islands, there was once an elite class that thrived in a world far more extreme. In the Arctic, where temperatures plunged to -84 degrees Fahrenheit, the true currency wasn't money. It was survival. Cash had no value here. You couldn't buy warmth, safety, or food with it. A stack of dollar bills made a terrible blanket, and trust me, a wallet makes a poor pillow when the ice is biting through your bones. For the Inuit, wealth looked completely different. It wasn't about possessions. It was about skill, knowledge, and social bonds. The original upper class came from the most successful hunters, men and women who could read the land like a map, predict animal movements days in advance, and provide for entire communities with a single well-placed spear. These elite hunters held territories spanning up to 50 square miles of frozen wilderness, but they didn't hoard their success. Instead, they practiced something anthropologists call balanced reciprocity, a give-and-take system where generosity built influence. The more you shared, the more you were trusted. And in a world where isolation meant death, trust was everything. When most people think of igloos, they picture small, round snow huts, simple, temporary shelters carved out of ice. But for the Inuit elite, home looked very different. These weren't snow shacks, they were ice mansions, meticulously designed to withstand the deadliest climate on Earth and built to impress. Archaeological discoveries have revealed that the wealthiest Inuit families lived in multi-chamber igloos that covered over 1,200 square feet. That's bigger than many city apartments, and with better views too. These weren't single-room domes, they were interconnected suites with specific rooms for sleeping, cooking, storage, and even entertaining guests. But what really set them apart was the engineering. These homes were architectural marvels, built with spiral construction techniques and snow blocks cut at precise angles, often between 15 to 20 degrees, creating a natural compression that made the structures stronger over time. As snow melted and refroze, the igloo literally reinforced itself, like a self-healing fortress made of ice. At the entrances, some elite homes featured massive whalebone archways, not just for decoration, but for structural support strong enough to resist 100-mile-per-hour winds. These bones were the Arctic equivalent of steel beams, and a bold status symbol that told everyone who the top family was in the community. Inside, the design was just as impressive. Ventilation systems were carved into the snow using different densities and carefully placed openings, allowing warm air to circulate while keeping deadly cold out. At -84 degrees Fahrenheit outside, these homes stayed at a relatively cozy 32 degrees inside, which, in Arctic terms, might as well be beach weather. Even the layout held deep meaning. The placement of rooms followed strict cultural protocols, and every detail, from raised sleeping platforms to carved features in the walls, reflected status, knowledge, and identity. These weren't just shelters, they were statements, physical expressions of social rank, engineering brilliance, and survival mastery. In the Arctic, fashion wasn't just about looking good, it was about staying alive. But for the Inuit elite, survival and style went hand in hand. Welcome to a world where every stitch could mean the difference between life and death, and where your coat spoke louder than any brand label ever could. The wealthiest families wore garments crafted by master seamstresses, artisans whose skills were passed down through generations. These women could sew up to 20 stitches per inch by hand, with a precision that rivaled modern sewing machines. One mistake could let the cold seep in, and in the Arctic, a draft could turn deadly. Their clothing wasn't just warm, it was engineered for performance. Each seam was watertight, each layer of fur and skin strategically placed for maximum insulation and breathability. A well-made sealskin parka could protect you in temperatures as low as -60 degrees Fahrenheit. But this wasn't just functional gear, it was high-status fashion. The truly elite wore coats with intricate fur patterns, designs so detailed they told stories of family history, great hunts, and regional identity. These were Arctic designer pieces, recognizable at a glance, just like a luxury label today. And then there were the colors, bold, rare dyes created from crushed minerals, seaweed, and fermented marine oils. One shade of deep red was so difficult to produce that only a tiny fraction of the population ever wore it. These colors weren't just rare, they were power. Accessories made the look complete. The elite fastened their coats with ivory toggles, hand-carved from walrus tusks into detailed mini-sculptures. A single toggle could take weeks to make, sometimes depicting entire hunting scenes smaller than a coin. During ceremonies, they wore elaborate masks and headpieces, decorated with rare feathers, beads, and treated furs, passed down like royal jewels. In a place where frostbite could strike in minutes, fashion wasn't frivolous. It was a badge of identity, craftsmanship, and elite survival. In the Arctic, food wasn't just fuel, it was prestige, power, and performance. And for the Inuit elite, mealtime was a spectacle, where every bite told a story of status, survival, and skill. Their food storage systems were nothing short of genius. Beneath the snow, elite families carved underground chambers layered with natural permafrost zones. Essentially, the Arctic's version of a walk-in freezer, but without any electricity. These multi-zone storages could keep different types of meat fresh for months, each section fine-tuned for specific temperatures. Some could hold over 1,000 pounds of meat, enough to feed an entire community through the winter. The Inuit upper class indulged in exotic and sometimes deadly delicacies. Take polar bear liver, for example. Once considered a luxurious treat, it was eventually discovered to contain lethal levels of vitamin A. One wrong serving, and your dinner guest might never leave. Then there was aged whale skin, or muktuk, a fermented dish that required precise storage conditions for months. Done right, it was a prized centerpiece. Done wrong, it could knock out your entire guest list. Their preservation techniques were generations ahead of their time. From burying fish in specific soil types for exactly 21 days, to air-drying meat using wind patterns, elite families mastered methods that modern food scientists are still studying today. And then came the spices. Yes, spices in the Arctic. Through vast trading networks, the wealthiest families got their hands on rare flavorings, sometimes trading an entire season's hunt for just a pouch. These weren't just for taste, they were status symbols, proof of reach and reputation. But perhaps the most fascinating part of their cuisine wasn't what was served, but who got to eat it. Feasts followed a strict social hierarchy. The rarest dishes were reserved for the most prestigious guests. Archaeological sites show distinct eating zones, with prime cuts served only to the top of the social ladder. For the Inuit elite, feasts were more than meals. They were public displays of power, generosity, and social ranking, where food was both sustenance and symbol. And to serve those feasts and keep those networks alive, you needed one thing: a transportation system that could beat the blizzard. In a land where the landscape could vanish beneath a storm and the road was made of ice, transportation wasn't just a luxury, it was a lifeline. And the Inuit elite didn't just move across the Arctic. They built systems that rivaled modern logistics, powered entirely by fur, instinct, and ingenuity. Their vehicles? Elite dog sled teams, the Arctic equivalent of private jets. But these weren't just any dogs. Wealthy families ran selective breeding programs, raising powerful, resilient teams that could maintain speeds of 25 miles per hour. Even in sub-zero whiteouts, training was just as critical. These dogs weren't only taught go and stop. They learned over 20 complex commands, including how to respond to different snow types, avoid unstable ice, and navigate storms. Some teams could find their way home from over 100 miles away, guided by scent, memory, and starlight. But a sled is only as good as its build, and elite sleds were masterpieces of engineering. The runners, the sled's base, were crafted from whalebone, which glided more smoothly over ice than wood. Using lamination techniques centuries ahead of their time, craftsmen built sleds that were strong yet flexible, capable of bending without breaking in temperatures that shattered regular materials like glass. But getting from point A to point B was just part of the strategy. The elite had access to secret travel routes, passed down through generations. These weren't marked on any map. They were mental atlases, accounting for seasonal ice shifts, wind patterns, animal migrations, and terrain changes. Along those routes, they established emergency caches, hidden storage shelters stocked with food, tools, and survival supplies. These caches, spaced about a day's journey apart, formed a supply chain system that could stretch for hundreds of miles. Some even had preserved goods that lasted over 150 years, a logistical feat that would impress any modern military. To outsiders, it might look like they were simply crossing snow, but in truth, they were navigating a finely tuned network of mobility, survival, and status, one that ensured they always reached the hunt first, arrived to trade on time, and returned home safely. Running a business is hard enough, Now imagine doing it when your roads are made of ice, your office moves with the seasons, and your delivery team howls at the moon. For the Inuit elite, this was just another day at work, because behind their survival was something even more impressive, a trade network that spanned over 1,000 miles of frozen wilderness. These weren't simple exchanges. They were complex economic systems, built entirely without written records, currency, or tech, and yet they rivaled modern supply chains in both efficiency and strategy. Elite families mastered the art of barter valuation, understanding exactly how much a sealskin was worth in one region versus another. What might fetch a handful of fox furs in the north could trade for rare spices or tools in the south. The sharpest traders could turn a single item into months of provisions, simply by knowing the right route and the right timing. To support these long journeys, they established cash systems, hidden Arctic banks carved into the ice. These were secure storage points, stocked with goods like preserved meat, oil, tools, and even rare trade items. Archaeologists have found caches containing items from over 30 different regions, proving these weren't just survival kits. They were distribution centers for the elite. And just like today's savvy investors, Inuit trading families understood risk management. They diversified their goods across multiple routes and caches, ensuring that a single storm, predator, or accident wouldn't wipe out their wealth. No insurance policies, just pure strategy. Some families even developed trading monopolies, guarding secrets like preservation techniques or exclusive dye recipes for generations. One family's innovation in seal oil preservation allowed them to dominate trade for decades, a true Arctic empire built not on gold, but on fat. Every season brought its own opportunities and challenges. These elite traders practiced seasonal economic planning, knowing exactly when certain regions would run low on supplies, and timing their expeditions down to the moon phase. Their calendars were more precise than any app, and missing a window could mean losing an entire year's worth of opportunity. In the frozen silence of the north, far from markets and cities, the Inuit elite built an economic web that kept goods and influence constantly flowing. In the Arctic, failure didn't mean a bad grade. It meant frostbite, starvation, or worse. So for the Inuit elite, education wasn't optional. It was a full-scale, high-stakes survival curriculum, and it started young. By the age of 6, children from wealthy families were already learning to read the wind, track animals, and predict weather patterns with frightening accuracy. While most kids today are still learning to tie their shoes, these young students were mastering the art of navigation and survival in one of the harshest environments on Earth. And they didn't learn in classrooms. They trained in specially built teaching igloos, designed for one purpose: education through simulation. Some of these structures had built-in wind tunnels, star-viewing windows, and even mock hunting grounds carved from snow, where students could practice tracking seals without ever leaving the safety of the training dome. One of the most extraordinary skills they learned was celestial navigation, using the stars as a GPS. Young elites memorized over 100 star patterns, learning how they shifted through the seasons. These weren't just constellations, they were maps encoded in the sky. Oral songs passed down through generations held information so detailed they could describe entire hunting territories, in rhythm and rhyme. And knowledge wasn't just told, it was tested. Education was hands-on and unforgiving. By age 15, elite children had to lead real expeditions, forecast storms, and navigate unfamiliar routes. Success wasn't measured by report cards, it was measured by coming home alive. Historical records show a 90% success rate among elite teenagers on these expeditions, far above the average. Because in this world, education wasn't about theory. It was about survival, legacy, and proving that you were worthy to inherit the knowledge of generations. This wasn't just schooling, it was a rite of passage, a training ground for future leaders, explorers, and strategists who would guide their families through blizzards, across trading routes, and into the future. And once trained, their next challenge wasn't the hunt, it was navigating the politics of love and power. In the Arctic, love wasn't just about romance, it was about strategy, survival, and power. For the Inuit elite, marriage was a calculated move, a union that could merge hunting grounds, unlock trade routes, and reshape the balance of influence across entire regions. These weren't casual courtships. Arranged marriages were common, often decided while the children were still young. Families would spend years scouting potential matches, observing everything from hunting skills to social connections, long before any wedding was even discussed. And the stakes? Enormous. A well-chosen marriage could grant access to prime whale hunting territory, exclusive travel routes, or valuable trade partnerships. Dowries weren't about gold or livestock. They included entire economies, like rights to food caches, ceremonial knowledge, and inherited alliances that had been built over generations. But status alone wasn't enough. Elite sons and daughters had to prove their skills before being considered marriage material. Testing grounds were set up where young men would demonstrate hunting precision and navigation abilities, while young women showcased mastery in clothing construction, survival techniques, and resource management. These weren't traditions for show. They were performance-based vetting systems that ensured only the most capable entered elite unions. And when the match was made, the celebrations were legendary. Wedding feasts could last an entire moon cycle. That's nearly a month of gathering, trading, storytelling, and community bonding. These weren't just parties. They were political summits, disguised as festivals, where families negotiated new deals, cemented alliances, and displayed their wealth through food, fashion, and hospitality. Some families prepared for up to 2 years for a single marriage celebration, stockpiling rare delicacies from across the Arctic and constructing ceremonial igloos just for the occasion. Guests traveled from hundreds of miles away, and every detail, from seating arrangements to meal portions, reflected the social hierarchy at play. In every great society, wisdom holds the highest seat, and for the Inuit elite, that wisdom lived in their elders. These weren't just respected grandparents. They were leaders, judges, healers, historians, and advisors, the living libraries of Arctic civilization. Wealthy elders held a unique kind of authority. When one spoke, the entire community listened. Their decisions shaped migration patterns, resolved disputes, and even determined whether families stayed or moved across hundreds of miles of frozen land. In fact, historical records show that 95% of community decisions made by respected elders were followed without question, a level of influence most modern leaders could only dream of, and that influence was earned. These elders carried decades of first-hand knowledge, from hunting and weather systems to oral histories and ancestral land rights. Some could predict animal migrations just by observing subtle shifts in wind patterns or the way ice formed near the shore. Their mental maps of the environment were so detailed, modern scientists have used their insights to reconstruct centuries of Arctic climate change. Their roles went beyond decision-making. Many served as healers, using techniques passed down through generations. They prepared medicines from rare plants acquired through trade and conducted rituals in specialized healing chambers, snow-built sanctuaries designed to control humidity, airflow, and temperature with precision. Even their sleeping arrangements reflected their elevated status. Wealthy elders often had private quarters with raised platforms, sometimes up to 3 feet higher than the rest of the igloo, literally placing them above others while they slept. Their chambers were strategically positioned to observe both the natural world and community activity, like Arctic command centers built from snow and silence. But perhaps their most powerful gift was their ability to resolve conflict. Elders knew every alliance, every rivalry, every shared hunt and broken promise. Their role in community-level diplomacy helped prevent feuds, maintain peace, and ensure that resources were fairly shared, not just for survival, but for harmony. At the core of this story is one powerful truth. In the Arctic, survival was the ultimate status symbol. The Inuit elite didn't gain power through gold or land. They earned it through skill, knowledge, and trust. In a world where a single mistake could mean death, wealth wasn't about what you owned. It was about what you could do. Reading the wind, tracking animals, building, trading, and thriving in a land of ice. Without modern tools, they built systems of shelter, fashion, medicine, and trade. Innovations born from pure necessity and passed down through generations. They didn't just survive, they created an Arctic nobility rooted in adaptability and wisdom. And in the end, that's the legacy they left behind, a blueprint for resilience, where true wealth was measured in mastery.